Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to be jamming here a bit. I'm going to be on lead vocals for a little bit here. We got Marco on percussion. Got Marco on. All right. We got Christopher on bass. Yeah. We got Alan in the back room on the controls. So let's jump into it. So tonight we're going to be talking about a proposal I have for the Chrysalis Calendar, which will address three kind of fundamental different sort of like classes of events from a particular lens. And within those classes, there's just essentially near infinite variations possible. And then we're going to delve into what I call kind of the laws of physics of multiple conversations interacting, some of the beginnings of the laws of physics. Let's just call it the Newton's laws. It's not quantum mechanics. It's not all the laws of physics, just kind of the Newton's laws, right? F equals ma kind of stuff. And then we'll kind of just go from there, and we'll go to some pretty cool spaces. And then where we'll get to finally in the end is how we might color code the calendar, the Chrysalis calendar, for these three different classes or mega categories of types of events. All right, ready to go? And just jump in with any questions, you guys. I'm going to rely on Marco and Christopher to jump in with anything that's like not crystal clear. So if it's not clear to you, it's probably not clear to the people who are watching. So just jump in and ask questions. All right. Okay. So let's first talk with a list of what are the three different classes of events. I'm going to call them by name. One class is called Cool Kids. Another class I'm going to call Monopole. And the third class I'm going to call Multipole. So Cool Kids, Monopole, Multipole. Cool Kids, as the name suggests, is somebody, either one person or multiple people, presenting. And then other participants, other than the presenters, don't get to talk. They get to listen, maybe they get to chat, but they don't get to talk, right? Only the cool kids get to talk. That's why we call it the Cool Kids kind of class of events, right? Humanity Rising, anytime someone's presenting or something like that. Could be multiple people presenting or one person, but anyway, only the cool kids get to talk. Everybody else gets to shut up and maybe chat. And there's no guarantee even that your chats will get answered or anything like that. But anyway, cool kids. So, and you know, for millennia, we've kind of been in cool kids mode. And, you know, and then now let's go from there to what's monopole. Monopole means conversation. Yes, everyone gets to talk, but it's one conversation kind of floating in space. It's not connected to any other conversations. Multipole means multiple conversations, but they're connected, and people can actually move from conversation to conversation. So cool kids, monopole, multipole. Any questions or comments? Okay.
Pretty clear.
Okay, great. Now let's get into where I'm really going to focus most of the time is on multipole, because that's where all the action is. And where I'm really going with this in the Chrysalis calendar is I believe that we need to go increasingly multipole in terms of multiple conversations interacting until we finally get to a fully formed butterfly, which we're going to call, ready for this? Maybe get some drum roll going on, Marco. Now we're talking. Okay, maybe some bass. Okay, we're going to get to a place of omnipole where all the conversations are connected. One fully integrated butterfly. Can you imagine a fully integrated Mother Earth? All of her children, all of her children's species, all together, right? All in harmony again, and in balance again, where we're not, you know, committing omnicide. So instead of omnicide, let's go omnipole in the conversations, y'all. All right. So that's what we're talking about. Okay.
Everybody gets a voice.
Everybody has a place, and all conversations are connected. There aren't like, some cool kids thinking they're ruling the world, or even monopoles where they're kind of off isolated thinking they're cool. Not to confuse cool kids with monopole, but anyway, omnipole is where we're going. But to get there, let's start with what I call the Newton's laws of multipole conversations, of multiple conversations. So I'm going to screen share. And again, everybody just jump in whenever you have something to say. Questions, comments, etc. Here goes. So screen sharing. Let me get this okay. All right. So let's begin our exploration with, and I'm going to highlight here as we go. Let's begin our exploration with a single monopole. This is what I'm going to call a monopole, one single conversation, and it can be a series of conversations. I'm really talking about series, because a single conversation would be like this one conversation there, like a single, brick in a growing stack of bricks. Okay. And then this would be the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. Now, they could be series of conversations, or it could be a conversation that gets just sliced up into slices of 10 minutes, and that just goes on continuously. So really, these are somewhat arbitrary slices to a conversation that just kind of goes on, and it goes on, and that's what this arrow indicates, right? So so this is a monopole conversation. And as you can see down here, I can see I got to get rid of this. Okay. As you can see down here, I'll probably start highlighting now. All right. This conversation kind of starts here, and it draws upon it's based on some content. So these three white ovals that I just highlighted are the content that feeds into this initial conversation, and then it kind of builds from there. And this content could be anything. It could be books, magazine articles, recordings of other people's conversations. And so I'm just kind of using the internet here as kind of a metaphor for all the information that's known, all the content that's known, even though there's lots of information and content that's not on the internet, but I'm just kind of calling it the internet. Anyway, you'll see where this is going in a minute. But let's just kind of start with that. Okay. Now, from that monopole, consider that, again, this is another monopole series of conversations. A conversation in a series that just goes on and on are really the same thing. You call it a conversation, you call it a series. We're really talking about the same thing. It's just something that starts and then just goes on and on and on, right? Even the block parties could be qualified as that, or food healers segments. So it's really kind of like a fractal-like sort of concept. Now, but just consider that recordings and transcripts from this monopole, this singular stack, of a series of conversations, if it's recorded and transcribed, it becomes content on the internet. It becomes one of those ovals. You see how I've just kind of got it partly shaded, because it's sort of like an oval in progress. And then that could in turn be used as the basis for some other conversation. Right here, I'll just draw it in. If this conversation here used that as one of its basis, seed content that it's starting from, right? Every conversation starts from something that came before, right? So this just kind of is just sort of creating a kind of a logical mapping of that. We're just basic theory here. So that could become the basis for for another conversation. Okay, for another conversation. All right. And when I show these lines here, it just means it came from somewhere. It started from somewhere. It was inspired by somewhere. And I usually show 3, but it could be 17. It could be any number. Now, what if, so in this kind of model of the world, any content that any conversation starts from draws from this thing called the internet. It draws from one or more artifacts from the internet. But what if we could make this whole process much more real time, much more dynamic, much more like an integrated circuit, right? What if we went all the way to an extreme of an integrated network of conversations where the ultimate extreme is the omnipole, all these conversations all hyper-connected, feeding off of each other, building off of each other, right? So let's start with some basic scenarios. And this is what I call the Newton's laws of conversations, right? So the first basic scenario, you've got this series of conversations, which I'm number 1. Let's just say a series of conversations, number 1, which draws from whatever it draws upon. And then at some point, that conversation kind of reaches a conclusion and forms the basis for a new series of conversations, right? Number 2. It's kind of like, you know what, this one, number 1, has kind of run its course. The party's moving over here, and then it picks up and goes from there, right? Just a basic scenario. Okay, I'm going to call this the 1-2, the 1-2. Maybe give a little drums and some bass, you know, kind of 1-2, boom, 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 you know, 1-2. Okay, we start with 1, and it shifts over to 2. Party moves over to 2. Real simple. You'll see where this is going. This will become clear as we do some more scenarios. Another scenario I'm going to call the bifurcation, right? So again, you've got series number 1. It reaches its logical conclusion, and then it's like, you know, half the people say, no, I want to go this way. The other half, they say, no, you guys are wrong. Let's go this way, right? And so this first conversation kind of ends, perhaps in disagreement or something, or they just choose to go explore different ways. One group then goes over to this monopole of number 3, and the other one goes over to this other monopole of number 2. So they've split, right? It started with some basis that created series number 1. Series 1 came to an end, and it bifurcated into 2 and 3. Bifurcation. So far, so good?
Yep.
Okay. And we can always go back and backtrack and everything, but we're just laying down some basic scenarios. The next one, from bifurcation, splitting in 2, let's go to a more general scenario called n-furcation, where it starts with 1 and then splits into 2 and 3 and 4, all the way to n, whatever n is, some integer, right? So again, we started with 1, that ran its course, and then it split into all these different ones, including all these ellipses. And then they each went off on their merry way, right? That's n-furcation. Now, you see how here, this picture here, this whole picture here, we're kind of looking at it in what we could call elevation view. We're looking at it on the side, right? Now, if you look at it from above, we'll see it in plan view, right? We're looking down on this stack number 1, and then it splits off into all these 2 through n, right? So anyway, we'll get more into plan view in a minute. Another basic scenario, we're going to call the sky bridge, right? So check this out. Here, you've got 2 different conversations happening in parallel. So this is kind of the beginning of multipole, right? You got 2 happening in parallel. They find out about each other and they say, hey, let's merge. And where they meet is somewhere in the middle. This is the sky bridge here. They meet in the middle and they say, hey, let's join and form a new conversation, which would be number 3. What's interesting about this is while they're 1 and 2, they're multipolar, bipolar in this case, 2 poles, right? And then when they merge, they've gone back to monopole. So from 2 to a single one, from 1 and 2 to 3. And so I represent that here. This is plan view, looking like bird's eye view, looking from above, right? You could sort of think of these as, you know, like 1 and 2 are 2 different skyscrapers, and then they build a sky bridge. Whoops, they build a sky bridge between them. It would actually look like this. So number 3 would be here in the middle. But anyway, they build a sky bridge, and then a number 3 tower shoots up from there. So again, in plan view, you've got sky bridge, where 1 and 2 build a bridge and form 3. You've got 1 to 2. This is all plan view now that we're looking at now, or bird's eye view. 1 to 2, bifurcation from 1 to 2 and 3. And when it started as 1, it was monopole. And when it bifurcated, let me show that one again, the bifurcation. When it bifurcated, in this scenario here, is it cool kids, monopole, or multipole? Which is it?
Say again.
So after the bifurcation, where there's now 2 happening in parallel, number 2 and number 3, in this scenario where these 2 are happening in parallel, is it a situation of cool kids, monopole, or multipole?
Probably multipole.
Exactly, because it's 2 or more, so it's multi. Is that clear to everybody? Okay, here's another question. When it was back in 1, what was it? Cool kids, monopole, or multipole?
That was cool kids.
No. It's a conversation with multiple people. So it's actually monopole. So see, whenever it's a conversation and everyone gets to talk, it's either monopole if it's one conversation, right, and multipole if there's more than one, right?
Yeah, I missed it. The first one. Yeah, if it's a conversation, then it's.
Yeah, exactly. I didn't make that clear, but all of these where you see a series of conversations, it's either, if it's one single conversation, it's monopole. If it's 2 or more, it's multipole. All right, cool. And then
cool kids is a presentation.
Cool kids is a presentation, and we're not even dealing with that in everything I'm screen sharing here. That's just in a class all by itself. Cool kids, right? So although it could fit within this framework, why not? But anyway, let's leave cool kids aside for the moment. And okay, so here, when it's just one, what is it? Monopole or multipole?
That's when it's 1, it's monopole.
Good. And then after the bifurcation, where it's split into all these, what is it?
Then we're multipole.
Multipole, exactly. Everybody clear? Okay, cool. All right. So we've looked at sky bridge, we've looked at 1 to 2, we've looked at bifurcation, and we've looked at bifurcation. Everybody ready to go beyond?
Yes.
All right. So first of all, looking from the bird's eye view or plan view, as we get to more and more complex scenarios, like we could start here with a monopole that could trifurcate into boom, boom, boom. Now it's multipole. This one here could then bifurcate where n equals 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And then these 3 could form a sky bridge to form that one. You see that? Right? They could sky bridge there. This is another sky bridge, and this is another bifurcation. So anyway, all different scenarios are possible, right? Let me get rid of all the yellow stuff. Sometimes I like to do that and then get rid of all. Clean the slate a little bit.
Yeah, pretty much endless possibilities.
Endless possibilities. So we're just kind of laying down the Newton's laws, and in fact, you know, early in the study of physics, people thought that was all there was. It was like a Newtonian universe, you know, before like quantum mechanics and all kinds of other cool stuff was discovered. It was just like a Newtonian universe. It's very simple, cause and effect, and everything can be explained in very simple principles, etc. All right, let me just get rid of all the yellow in case I need to go back. Isn't that cool? Okay. All right. So onward. Okay. So here we are with the bird's eye view, the plan view, and it's just infinite possibilities. From elevation view, this isn't exactly necessarily the same schema, but
right.
You know, you start with a monopole here, a monopole there. Here it bifurcates. Now it's this one bifurcates into two. This one does a 1-2 transition, I think we call that, right? So it goes from one monopole to another. So in a way, this is still monopole over here. This one went multipole. But if you think of it as a whole, as long as they know about each other and people can bounce from one to the other, it goes multipole pretty quickly. Here, this is, what do you call this scenario when these two kind of meet in the middle?
Sky bridge.
Sky bridge, that's right. And then here you go. So and then this sky bridge can bifurcate later on, right? And we can call this one a sky bridge as well, because these three, it's just like a sky bridge where the three join together and form that. In bird's eye view, that would be like this scenario, right? 1, 2, 3, they've merged together to form that. Anyway, so just kind of playing around with it. Eventually, we're going to get to what I call the Manhattan skyline, looking at it from elevation view, right? All these conversations, and they're all interconnected, right? So far, we've just been looking at some basic scenarios, but that's kind of what we want to get to. So giving some of these some names. So the 1-2, what I've been calling the 1-2, that's a transition. It went from one monopole to another. That's a transition. Here's another one. Now we're going to get to something new where you've got one monopole, but then it gets to this point, and some of the people here break away and say, hey, let's create our own conversation over here. We've kind of had enough of number one. We want to do number two. We're not shutting down number one. Number one keeps on going, right? So beneath this yellow line, is it monopole or multipole?
Oh,
beneath the monopole. And above the yellow line, what is it?
I see. Yeah, well, it's multipole.
Multipole, right? Okay. Now let's talk about another. Here, the sky bridge we've already seen before, but I'm giving it a new name. I'm calling it a sky bridge merger, right? You had one and you had two, and then they do a Brady Bunch, and you know, they say, okay, let's all get together, and they form three. So this is an interesting scenario. So beneath the blue line, is it monopole or multipole?
It would be multipole.
Multipole. Multipole if they know about each other, right? That's still kind of a question mark.
Oh, okay.
I'm being a little bit ambiguous here, but anyway, let's call it multipole. Let's assume they know about each other. And then they decide to merge. After they merge, what is it, monopole or multipole?
Sky bridge.
After the sky bridge happens, number three. So now, move so above this blue line here, is it monopole or multipole?
It seems like it's monopole.
It is. It's monopole because there's only one conversation. It's not connected to anything else. That's it. It's just alone in the universe.
In order for the two to have made the sky bridge and get to this one to make a monopole conversation, they kind of had to know about each other. Otherwise, they couldn't have collaborated to make the third conversation.
Exactly. That's why it's multipole prior to this moment here. But then after that moment, after the merger, once they've merged, they kind of collapse into one, and then it's monopole. Right?
Yeah.
Okay. Now I'm going to look at something just slightly different from that. I'm going to call it the Skybridge joint venture, different from the Skybridge merger. Okay. The joint venture says, and this happens in corporations all the time. There have been a lot of famous joint ventures. You've got one conversation here. Think of it like a corporation, literally with its own growing skyscraper that just keeps adding layers on. I kind of think of these as skyscrapers in a way, because they're all reaching for the sky. They keep going up, up, up. They've got some aim, some telos. So when you had 1 and 2, let's say they know about each other. So beneath let me pick a color here. Beneath this green line, is it monopole or multipole?
Multipole.
Multipole, because there's 2 of them. Now they say, okay, in this scenario here, 1 and 2 continue onward and upward, onward and upward. And some of the folks from 1 come over, and some of the folks from 2 come over to form a third, number 3. And it takes off on its own. So now you have 3 different conversations going in parallel. So it's multipole, right?
Oh.
So it started as multipole, and it continued on as multipole. It went from 2 different ones to 3 different ones. I call it a joint venture because in order for 3 to be born, it depended on the joint participation of 1 and 2. So now we have 2 different kinds of skybridges: a skybridge merger and a skybridge joint venture. All right. Now let's look at another scenario. The World Cafe. This is kind of cool. So you guys, we've talked about the World Cafe model.
Yeah.
So the World Cafe starts out as monopole. You've got a bunch of people in a room and all having one conversation. And then they break out into groups of 4. 4 people here, 4 people there, 4 people there, 4 people there. Here, 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 here. And I think it's for like 20 or 30 minutes. They have their meeting. So they started off as monopole, then they went to multipole, and then they all came back together again as a big merger back to the main room, and now they're monopole again. Isn't that kind of cool?
Yeah.
That's the World Cafe process. And then it repeats, right? And then they, let me just draw it. And then they, then they branch out.
World Cafe and the glass beads are very much the same.
Exactly. They both follow this model. So it kind of goes back and forth from monopole to multipole. And from bird's eye view or plan view, it starts out here as just one big one, and then it breaks out and breaks out, breaks out, breaks out. And then after a certain period of time, it comes back and comes back and comes back. Anyway, the laws of physics of conversations. And okay, now let me get to a scenario that I'd really like for us to develop in practice, which you guys are intimately familiar with with the camp. Well, obviously the campfire. You guys are like the all-time world leaders of the campfire, right? Which when it's just the campfire and there's no interactions with anyone else, it's just a monopole. It can be really cool. When there's breakout rooms, it's multipole, right?
Yeah.
But this specific scenario I want to talk about next is where we start out an event. We create an event that starts out as multipole, 2 poles precisely. So I'm just going to use Kikolab as an example.
Okay.
Because as we saw at the last Kikolab meeting, there were a whole bunch of people in the room, a whole bunch. And there were like, a few dozen. And when there were so many people there, not that many people got to talk at the same time. So now just imagine, again, I'm just going to use Kikolab as an example. I haven't talked with them about this. I want them to watch this video and see what they think. But the reality is this could be applicable to any other big meeting that has a lot of participants that are doing really cool things. Is just imagine from the get-go, starting at 12 noon Pacific time, let's say. We said, okay, from the get-go, there's going to be 2 meetings happening in parallel in 2 different Zoom rooms. You got your Kiko meeting, right? And you got your conversation meeting over here. It's the conversation, okay? The conversation.cc. And they both start at the same time. And initially, all the actions in the Kikolab meeting, and the campfire is just holding space, right? Maybe there's 2 or 3 of us just kind of holding space in the campfire. But the idea is this: as the numbers of participants in the Kikolab meeting grow, and that's been the trend lately, as it's just like blowing up in a good way, and I think that trend's going to continue. Just imagine that, and they kind of jump from topic to topic, but then some of the people are like, hey, I want to keep talking about this, or I want to go deeper into this topic of, jazz metaphors, or collective superintelligence, or calendaring, or monetization, or whatever it is that they want to go get into. Guess what? We invite them to come over here to the campfire. Let's say there's this portion of, say, half a dozen people. Say, you know what, we want to break away, temporarily anyway. And imagine, just imagine we've got, this would all have to be worked out in advance and everyone would have to agree to it. So, it's not like there's a conflict or competition. That's the old model. In this new multipole model beckoning towards omnipole, right? The idea is, hypothetically, we work something out. And again, I'm not going to speak for Kikolab. They may want to do this, they may not. But imagine their game. And then, so a group of them says, hey, I want to talk about, let's just say it's SRM. We want to talk about SRM. Okay, great. Leave the Kikolab meeting, come to the campfire, and we will create an SRM breakout room where you all can go there and talk SRM to your heart's content. And maybe they do that for a while. And then maybe after talking about it for a while, they go back to Kikolab meeting and give them an update, right? And likewise, maybe another group of the Kikolab participants say, hey, we want to be in a breakout room. We want to talk about this. So again, they'd go to the campfire and then we'd create a breakout room and they'd go there. Now, let me get off screen share for a few minutes. First of all, and this is not a trick question or anything, this is something I've given some thought to, but I'd like to hear your guys' thoughts. Why would we have them go from the Kikolab meeting all the way over to a different Zoom room, to the campfire, to go to a breakout room? Why wouldn't they just do that from within Kikolab?
Yeah, that was my question.
Mm-hmm. I mean, I have a thought, but I just want to turn it over to you guys.
Yeah, I'm kind of puzzling on it right now.
Well, no, it helps. I mean, the ongoing discussion at Kikolab is doesn't allow for a nuanced discussion about what if we wanted to talk about just SRM. That's not going to be conducive to the meeting.
Well, but
Yeah,
they could create a breakout room.
Right, right, that's true, yeah, okay.
What's the incentive to come to conversation and have a breakout room? The only thing I can think of is that it might be a little I just feel like for some reason it would give people more freedom to express themselves.
Well, let me tell you how I'm thinking about it. Let me quit playing games and just tell you what I'm thinking, right? And I'm not saying I'm right or this is perfect or anything like that, but my thought is this. Imagine that the campfire were like really, really good at holding space and assimilating people and directing traffic and also giving people introductions, because people might get confused. They might not know how to go to a breakout room. They might not know what a breakout room is. They might not know what all the options are. And so someone who arrives late, for example, an hour late, they might actually want to they might check in at Kiko Lab, but then go to the campfire and say, hey, I missed the first hour, help me out. The campfire is kind of like a really friendly place to orient people. The whole idea is that we allow the Kiko Lab big meeting to not break its flow. So let's say somebody there starts talking about SRM and then they say, no, we got to move on. And then that person could type into the chat, SRM moving over to the conversation. Anyone who wants to join, meet me there. They just have to type it in, and then nobody has to break the flow and create a breakout room or argue about it or anything. They just go, and then other people that want to follow, right? And then other people could just get to the campfire and say, hey, I heard there's a SRM meeting here. Oh yeah, breakout room number 3. Here, we'll send you there. So it's like the campfire, it's all about, there is no flow. It's helping people figure out where to go. That way it's just an idea I had. We'd have to try it out, see how it would work. But it's like the campfire. But actually, here, I'll go back to screen share because there's kind of a more general application to this where I think it would actually make even more sense. And that's the following, right? So we've talked about a Kiko Lab meeting. And let's say that's happening.
Right.
And then let's say that there is another meeting of the Money Free Party happening over here, another big meeting with lots of people. And let's say there's also a Rebel Wisdom meeting happening with a bunch of people, right? And a Vegan World 2026 meeting happening with a bunch of people. As we get more and more multipolar, as the multi goes from just 2 to many, right? Then the campfire and it plays an increasingly important role in that, number one, people arriving here can learn about and be directed to any of these other big meetings, right? And or they can go to breakout rooms that are just being generated on the fly, right? And they could be generated, just like we said, some people at Kiko Lab say, hey, let's talk about SRM. Okay, fine. Boom, go over there. So the campfire just becomes like this supporting role for multiple conversations to coexist and branch out, right? Bifurcate, enfricate, right? But the campfire, the conversation where the campfire is the main room, right? That becomes the place where we facilitate all that. And that way, at these other meetings, they can just jam. Now, if they want to manage their own breakout rooms, they totally can, right? But the idea is that we could kind of offer that as sort of like a service, right? That's kind of the big idea there.
That's awesome.
You like it?
Interesting. It'll be interesting to see it all play out live.
Well, and then check this out. as we go more omnipole, as all the conversations start to find out about each other, then the campfire starts to play a really important role. But then check this out. Imagine there's a campfire kind of room right here, literally in this Zoom room where we are right now, because this is the conversation, doing it in English. Imagine there's another whole other Zoom room called La Fogata, which is like campfire in Spanish, where they're doing it in Spanish. And then another one called Le Chihuahua, where they're doing it in Chinese, right? And et cetera, right? And another one that's, you know, just like a vegan campfire, another one that's LGBTQ, and, you know, and they, you know, that sort of thing. And it just sort of goes on and on. I'm going to pause recording for a second and I'll be right on. Okay, resuming. So anyway, that's the idea, that we have kind of different campfires that are able to kind of provide this very friendly landing spot. And they can have whole different foci, whether it's organized by culture, by language, by focus. Again, you know, vegans love to land in vegan communities, in vegan spaces, right? Because they understand each other and they can kind of compare notes and they can say, well, you know, we really like that meeting over there. We like certain things about it, but man, they're really not that vegan friendly. Or, oh no, these other meetings, these are all about, you know. So like, I'm imagining in the omnipole universe of conversations, once we're all integrating into this growing butterfly, this whole butterfly, that there will be different campfires, different safe spaces to land and get oriented. Because think about it, see, right now there's just, I don't know, thousands of us who are participating in these transformational conversations. It's probably more like tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands. But we still need to up it by like 3 or 4 or 5 orders of magnitude more than what we are right now to really get to the bulk of humanity, right? So we're going to need a lot of campfires with a lot of different areas of focus. What I'm suggesting is, number one, we can kind of help pioneer that practice of providing this support for multipolar networks of conversations, right? And we can therefore create a model that others can improve upon and say, hey, you know, thanks a lot, Campfire. That was a nice start. We're going to try this model here. And maybe you go to their campfire and there's just like this whole spreadsheet and all, it's like very data centric and all that. Others are much more human centric and conversational. And they could be multiple breakout rooms from a single campfire, providing different kinds of orientations. Hey, you know, what is this chrysalis thing? Well, you know, in breakout room 1, we address, you know, it's just for newcomers. What is this chrysalis? What is this network of conversations? What are imaginal cells? What's it all about, right? Another breakout room might be all about climate change. I don't know, or it might point you to a whole other big meeting on climate change, which might have its own breakout rooms, you know. So, but the basic idea is that certain Zoom meetings will just be like, they're just going for it. They're deep in whatever topic space they're in, like a good Kiko Lab meeting when it's just humming along. Others are more for like friendly spaces, you know, information booths, if you will, in the Zoomosphere, right?
Yeah, well, I started to put together, you know, a reason for coming to the conversation. It's like, in order to put people in multiple breakout rooms, it definitely is going to interrupt the flow over there, because there's only one main room that can make breakout rooms, and you got to coordinate that through that. So you take all that, it just happens in the chat. Anybody interested, go over, here's a link, go here, and you can get an explanation on any one of these. Yeah, I can see where it, you know, the value's there now. It doesn't interrupt the flow of Kiko Lab.
And that's the key. That's the key. The Zoom meetings that don't want to interrupt their flow, fine, go with it. We're here to provide the support. Or a whole network of campfires is there to provide support, right? And with that, that's how we get it all. That's how we kind of bring the whole omnipole network of conversations together and provide support. Anyway, we're just playing with some concepts here. I think we're at a good breaking point. So I say we take a break, and then I'll be sending this out via email, and we can go from there in tomorrow's meeting.
Sounds
So if
good.
you're watching this video, join us tomorrow, Thursday, starting at 8 a.m. Pacific time, and we'll go way deeper into all this and figure out where to start. Because where I'd like to start is actually coordinate with some big meetings like Ecolab, for example. Again, sorry, Ecolab, for using your example, but you're just super cool. And we can just try it out and play with it and see how it goes. And then we can go multipolar beyond the campfire, you know, other poles and one campfire providing support and really help people kind of make the transitions and move around and all that. So anyway, you know, hey, if you're going to Ecolab, make sure you raise your hand. Oh, this other meeting over here, oh, they're way more flexible. It's just kind of flowing. Oh, here they're playing a game. You know, it's kind of like an information booth, right? For the whole, this whole cluster of conversations. Anyway, lots to chew on, lots to think about. Thanks you guys so much. It's been super cool. And I look forward to seeing you soon. Thanks, everybody. We'll see you tomorrow precisely. Okay, thanks.
Nice.